Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is David Breer, and welcome to the very final episode of the 11FS FinTech Insider Breakfast Show. In this show, we have, from the very beginning of lockdown here in the UK, brought you the best and the brightest from around the fintech and banking landscape every single weekday, straight into your homes, live on, well, whichever platform really worked each day, to be honest with you, which was part of the charm of it, wasn't it, in terms of what we were doing. But we have had some pretty amazing guests on over this time period. We've had some great laughs. We've had some really good insights, lots of technical difficulties, the occasional disappearing host, the occasional disappearing guest. And today what we wanted to do is bring you a very final episode. And today I'm going to be joined by my colleagues at 11FS and also co-hosts on this show, Adam Davies and Simon Taylor. How are you doing, guys?
Really well. Thank you, David. How are you doing? You enjoying having a bit of working technology? It seems like it's all working so far. Touch wood, it could all go horribly wrong yet.
Fingers crossed. I mean, we've edged our bets, haven't we? With there's three of us, so if one of us disappears for a little bit, then we should be okay for a bit. But yeah, I mean, it's been a hell of a journey, right? You know, from March to now, like there's been a lot of shows and a lot of laughs, right? But I'm actually quite sad that this is ending, aren't you?
Yeah, it happened almost more or less by accident. We sort of didn't, it may not be obvious to the audience, but we didn't roll into this with a complete plan. It was sort of a, hey, this is a thing we should do. It's lockdown and things are changing and we've ended up with actually a lot of fun and some really incredible guests and some like incredible feedback. And I think what's really blown me away has been the audience. You know, you audience have been on there, and especially when we've been on LinkedIn, been able to send us comments, and that live interaction has been really, really phenomenal. And I've just enjoyed keeping Adam away from the school run. If he's back on that now, then watch out, world.
That comment did make me laugh yesterday, Adam. That was hilarious.
Yeah, my wife is. My wife knows this is the last show. Let's put it that way. It has been great to sort of live the lockdown, if you like, with different people who have tremendous responsibility over their own companies and have had to sort of run with the news on a daily basis as we've been doing the show, and sort of to see that evolve across many business owners and MDs and really important people at super important companies. It's been great to talk to them sort of on a daily basis about the latest news that's just coming out from the government. It's been really interesting for me anyway, just to see how different businesses have evolved during lockdown by virtue of just doing this show on a daily basis. It's been great.
Well, and it's forced us to get up out of bed early as well, right? Get up out of bed, get moving, get a cup of tea, tune in, have some fun. So, I mean, as always, guys, who are watching this over on YouTube this morning, as always, we love getting your questions, comments. As this is the last show, tell us what you thought about the show. I mean, if you've left it till this, the very last one, to tell us you think it's terrible, then like, why not? Have you not brought that up yet? But as always, hit those comments, any questions in that sidebar, and we'll add them as you go along as well. So maybe if we start a little bit with some of the statistics. I mean, like you were saying, Adam, this has been an ongoing thing. So we started the show back on the 16th of March, which was, I think, 2 weeks into lockdown. So, Tobias and the team don't muck around when we decide to do something, which is great. The first guest was Eric Fulwiler, our CCO at 11FS, who I dragged into the show, sort of kicking and screaming to sort of see what would happen if we started this. The US Breakfast Show started on 30th March, and when we realized we wanted to really kind of help out over in the US audience as well. Our very first US guest was Jill Castilla, who is amazing if you haven't watched that episode, but it didn't go quite according to plan, I think, with Jill's internet connectivity at that time. And we've had people jumping on, guests from all over the world, as Adam said, Hong Kong, India, US, Europe, China, Australia, Singapore, all over the place in terms of getting involved. And it's been amazing to hear actually how fintech has been changing during this period in all of these different geographies. At the start, we were producing 10 episodes a week. That was 5 in the UK and 5 in the US. We later dialed it down just to the 5. We've done 117 UK specific episodes and 85 US ones, meaning that since it started, we've done 257 episodes of The Breakfast Show, which is absolutely amazing. There's been some phenomenal kind of guests and phenomenal shows in there. But I mean, Simon, what stands out for you in that? There's been so many amazing guests, but who stands out for you?
Yeah, so I mean, it's kind of what do I remember, because it was all of a blur. I haven't been through a show where I haven't enjoyed it. They've all been pretty good, and they've all had their own quirks. I mean, definitely there has been some tech issues, but there was a Canadian company who I distinctly remember were up at 3 a.m. local time to speak to us about how they're kind of working directly with banks and helping with financial education in the crisis. And talk about commitment, helping with financial education in the crisis and being up at 3 a.m. to tell some Brits about it. Like that takes some serious doing. But I really enjoyed a couple. One with Catman from Nutmeg. I thought talking about sustainability and impact and the importance of building back better. You know, we are in a pandemic, but if we're going to invest in coming out of the pandemic, let's do so and try and leave the planet better than we found it. I mean, David Attenborough's gone on Instagram. Like, if he needs to go on Instagram to try and get through to people to stop killing the planet, then we can do something. And I think finance is key. So that was a great conversation, and I'd encourage you to check out Catman from Nutmeg on our breakfast show on YouTube. But also the one that stood out that I just didn't see coming was Damian Hughes, who was the author of the High Performance podcast and book and all kinds of stuff. It was just about how do you get the most out of people? How do you get the most out of teams? And I just didn't expect to be quite so riveted about this subject, because it was kind of out of left field for us, but it was just amazing.
Very good. Yeah, I know there's been some great ones in there. How about you, Adam? Who's your favourite that you've talked to?
I mean, again, there's been so many. It's hard to sort of pick one or two. I mean, I'd say I quite like the shows where you speak to somebody who's founded a company, and then you end the show thinking, "Crikey, I wish I'd done that." And I think there's. I spoke to Dan Garrett of Fairwill, and to be fair, before I spoke to him, I knew about the company, and I just thought, wow, this is just such an easy and obvious concept. But then actually you dig into a little bit of his past, as kind of the founder's past, and you realize actually what he did in a prior life, if you like, and some of the work experiences that he had, specifically around sort of care homes or whatever, and sort of his exposure to death, which led him to actually, you know, build the company and integrate that with amazing story. That one I also encourage everyone to check out. And then I think to end yesterday with Tech Nation, which I think was a really nice note, because it's sort of, there's a couple of angles on that. First of all, like, the investment in fintech is still there and thriving. I think the opportunities, even during a lockdown, for companies and small fintechs or small tech companies, I mean, I'm not going to categorize it. You're talking about the tech industry in general, to get help and support from different cohorts and different initiatives is amazing. And it was also great. I remember 5 years ago sitting with and listening to the government around investment in fintech in other areas of the UK, so just outside London, and it was really encouraging to hear that their latest cohort is 60% based outside of London, which also I thought was an amazing story. So, you know, even despite the lockdown, you know, they had more applicants, and they had, you know, a bigger cohort than they've ever had before, and I thought that was quite a nice note to end on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. It's shows to hope out of this period, doesn't it, in terms of everything that's going on. From my perspective, I think I absolutely agree with you. The Damian Hughes episode, Simon, really sort of stands out for me. I love business sports laterals, and actually that's what Damian does, right? So other ones, I mean, Gavin Ramsharan from BBC News, like, if there's ever somebody to make you feel intimidated about your presentation style, like he's amazing at that. So that was great. Jamie Heaslip really sort of stood out to me as well, like the tips and thinking on leadership, and that was really nice as well, because I mean, I was saying to you guys just before the show, I was just absolutely in awe of him and everything that he has achieved. Like, he's an absolute rugby legend, like sporting legend, but it's great that he listens to FinTech Insider so much, because he's getting into FinTech. So there was this weird moment where I was just like in awe of him, and he was in awe of the podcast. It was like such a beautiful thing. Anne Bowden, she's always great to talk to, having her on. I mean, Joan Dewar, from the CEO of GPS, we had on, was it 2 or 3 times in the end, Simon?
I think it was, well, if you include the Insight show, it's 3, but I think it was twice on the breakfast show.
Yeah, and they've done so much, haven't they? I mean, GPS are just one of those companies where you're like, they're behind so many great things, which is awesome. Jane Angardia, Snoop have just been on such a tear, haven't they? And then for me, like, there was some really interesting ones coming out of Asia. Dennis Govan, Mox CEO, and we had the guys from Razer on. That was amazing to kind of see what they're up to and see where they're going. But it's been pretty damn good, I have to say. And there's a question Paul Loberman. Which guests have you not managed to get on the Breakfast Show except Snoop Dogg that you would like to have got onto the show? What do you guys think? Who was a guest that you would have hoped we would have had on in this period, but haven't quite got to yet?
Yeah, I think Snoop was probably always going to be the one for me, but damn you, Paul, for picking that one.
Well, so
we've done actually really quite well. I think there's probably just like one or two folks that we're probably still working on at buzzy startups, fintechs that that are just a little bit harder to get hold of, but you may see coming up in a show near you soon that I'm really excited about in the banks as a service space or in the AML space. But we've got some really good things happening in that now in the next few weeks. So actually, I'm quite surprised about the opposite. I'm surprised who we've got and how many people say yes. Maybe like the Coma Dream guest is Jack Dorsey, always will be. If you're watching this, Jack, you know where we are. Call me. But other than that, I think we seem to do pretty well. I don't know, Adam. What about you?
Yeah, I kind of agree. I think any guest that we kind of want, but we haven't had, the Dorseys aside, maybe we're probably trying on. I do know and since lockdown, I've been on Twitter following quite a lot of this kind of Twitter money cult. That's not an individual handle. That's actually just sort of the word for a community on Twitter who talk about money quite a lot and talk about how to build passive income and I'd love to bring on a couple of those guests as well. But they all live in sort of middle of the road, if not to the west coast of the state, so the timings might not suit. But for the shows next week, they might. So or starting next week, they might. So I'm going to give it a go. But I think that that community in terms of how to build sort of passive income and help people who are maybe struggling through the downturn, I think would be really interesting.
Do you know, I was pushing pretty hard to try and get Ralph Hammers on, and I didn't manage to get that to happen. Obviously, transitioning from CEO of ING to CEO of UBS, but I think when he's settled in and life's a little bit simpler, then we'll probably get him on. I think the thing I was most impressed with during this period was it wasn't just fintech, right? We wasn't just fintech. Don't have like 1,000 people in their media team in their bank to sort of tell them to stop them doing something. We've had Ashok Vaswamy, CEO of Barclays. We've had the FCA. We've had the CEO of DNB. We've had big bank representation through this period as much as we've had fintech representation. Which for the FCA to feel comfortable enough to come on a live show with us that goes out is an amazing thing, I have to say. So yeah, that was pretty good. There was a question. Can you please recommend any new books on fintech? Reading Chris Skinner's new book right now. Anything else you guys would suggest as a book to read?
So I'm not a big book reader. I'm more of a podcast guy. But what I can say is that there is so much good content out there in terms of fintech. There are some Twitter handles I absolutely follow. And there are some newsletters. I absolutely have to give a shout out to Fintech Today and everything that Ian Carr and those guys are doing. I think that that's a phenomenal newsletter. I think what the folks over in what's the guy called? Oh, Nick, I forget his last name, runs Fintech Weekly, which is another great newsletter. And these things are just filled with ideas and content all of the time. But then also anything by Andreessen Horowitz, their blog lately has been phenomenal on fintech. They have a whole fintech newsletter. So it's more that stuff for me. I've never been a good book reader. And then the books that I would read would probably be stuff about business or stuff about something else that just maybe it suggests there needs to be a good fintech book written, David. I don't know. Maybe
I mean, I think it's interesting because fintech moves so quickly, doesn't it? That actually, if you write a book about it, by the time the book's been, gone through and published, it's probably out of date in terms of what it's doing, which probably spells to, like you say, Simon, why like management principle books make a lot of sense, but fintech is best in blogs because it's like immediate produce. I mean, it's why Gartner and Forrester are struggling so much, because at the point where you've published something, it's actually irrelevant to the market, isn't it?
Yes.
It takes 6 months to do it. So
yeah, I mean, I'd agree. I mean, even when we've written papers for 11FS, almost by the time you start, we've almost got to get the time that we write those papers down from sort of 2 months to sort of 3-4 weeks, because otherwise some of the examples that you're putting out might have been superseded by something else. And I agree with Si. I think reading the blogs and reading even just like things like Twitter threads and then looking into the newsletters that underpin those is where at the moment quite a lot of the nuggets are. And then from a book's perspective, I always look for narratives. So I've actually got my bookshelf behind me and on that one at the moment, which is always a good one to shout. Bitcoin Billionaires, that's one I'm enjoying right now. But but yeah, I think for absolute, like, always a novel for a book.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I'm very similar to Simon. It's I'm definitely an audiobook guy, because it's just like I need to like stop and actually take in the information properly, which is just it probably says more about my reading level than anything else I wanted to do. So, all right, guys. I mean, there's been a few times where everything's not gone quite so well. I mean, we all seem to have pretty stable internet connectivity this morning, but producer Hannah has listed out a few episodes where things didn't go quite so well, whether it was internet connectivity, whether it was technical difficulties, or when we just simply lost people's stream. Episode 63 of the US show really sort of stands out on that. We had Tom Peters, amazing author. Should have shouted out a bunch of his books, but go read Tom Peters' everything. And speaker, he came on the show, and due to technical difficulties, we ended up having to conduct a little bit of technical magic to bring him in using a Zoom call, figuring out that stuff on the fly, like while we're live. The guys have done just such an amazing job making that happen. In terms of in general internet connection issues, well, episode 110, so when we had Sohel Raj on from SocGen, so came on the show, stream crashed. We had to make a re-record, and then the screen crashed again. But we managed to get it together and put out a pretty decent show with him. Episode 125 with Andy McMillan as well, so the CEO of User Testing. Who was that? Oh, that was Sam, wasn't it, that one? It says, towards the ending, host Samuel's internet broke and he disappeared. So when the host, like when the guest disappears, we can sort of riff a little bit, right? When the host disappears, it really just shows how good the guest was. So Andy did such an amazing job. Like literally, guest closed out the show on his own, made some things, closed it out. Like, what an absolute hero, right?
Can we just take a moment for how Sam that is? That's the most Sam thing ever.
Yeah. Just went to make a cup of coffee, came back later, so
I was on the episode 110 with Sohel, and his time is hard to get, so but I had a meeting with him every day that week specifically to re-record podcast. It was amazing, and we had to dress up in the same clothes that we were in beforehand, because we were going to try and stitch the clothes together, all the sort of feeds together.
Continuity.
So I ended up wearing the same. Yeah, so I ended up wearing the same T-shirt like 3 days in a row.
Oh, that's your excuse. I see.
Yeah. yes.
Well, there's been loads of, I mean, not just learning continuity errors in recordings, but there's been lots of other learnings during this period as well. I mean, Simon, we like say through talking to all of these people, what's the biggest learning that you've had through this period?
That there's so many things happening in fintech that are completely unexpected, new and exciting. I think to Adam's point about TechNation, everybody looks at Monzo, Revolut, the big names, and goes, "Oh, that was fintech, right?" And it's like, no, you're not looking at the smaller stuff. The stuff that's exciting now is not the things that you've heard of in mainstream media. It's the stuff that you've never heard of, and the entrepreneurs that are trying to make a real difference for people post-pandemic is really inspiring. I think that I didn't know that there was a type of child savings account, the child ISA, that you could build into sort of a family savings pot. There was a really cool company that we had that was doing something along those lines. There's a company called Climate Invest that takes all of your savings and actively only puts them in things that are good for the environment, and then will sweep your money out of your bank account for you. The ability to be consistently surprised by what entrepreneurs are building and the diversity of thought in the fintech ecosystem is really, really exciting. I think the mainstream media may have written off fintech a little bit, and actually the opposite's happening from what I can see. If you scratch beneath the surface, it's probably never been more exciting. And just being able to be exposed to those smaller things has been hugely exciting.
I agree. What have you learned, Adam?
Yeah, I'd say something similar. I think the diverse nature of the use cases that come on the show is growing and growing, and that actually works not just for this show but also for the podcast and for the other shows that we had. And I think that's enabled by a lot of the people that we've spoken to on this particular show around, having these sort of really flexible platforms which people can just build really niche propositions on. And I think that's been really evident over the last sort of 3-4 months. And I've learned really that it's great to give people a voice, to be honest, and people really appreciate it. There's a lot of small companies that we've had on here, as well as the big companies and the big names that we've just spoken about before. But I love sort of speaking to, sort of either it's just seed funded or a company that's only just scaling now, like turning from startup to scale up, potentially 20, 25 employees who are trying to make it. And I think the giving them a platform on something as niche as this, but with something which, we push out quite hard on social and gives them a great audience, is just like, it's a fantastic outlet. So I think that's it. It's the community in general, but especially the smaller fintechs who need a voice and have got something really, really interesting to say.
No, I definitely agree with that, and as you say, the community part of that is really what stands out to me. It's been amazing to see during what is inevitably a really tough period for people professionally and personally, that people have really kind of come together, which is amazing. So we've had some amazingly loyal viewers as well. So Sridhar, who is the founder of Arnexa from San Francisco, has literally watched every single episode of the US show, like even all of Sam's tomfoolery through that period. So and he always came up with such an amazing array of questions every day. So thank you so much for that, Sridhar, as well.
Do you know what's nuts? I've been in calls with a couple of venture capitalists recently who've reached out and just gone, I've just been binge watching all of your breakfast shows for the last month. It's really weird seeing you in person. And I was like, whoa, yeah, we're hitting a niche audience with this, and there are some people that really love it. So thank you to all of that community that loves it, and also for everybody who's been on the live stream asking us questions.
Yes.
Like, sometimes that question really changes the show. Sometimes it takes it in a direction we didn't see coming, and that's hugely, hugely helpful. So shout out to all of you guys, and of course, producer Hannah, Olivia, Tobias. My goodness. How you handle those questions coming in and make our lives easier. The stress those guys put up with is phenomenal.
Well, there was some great feedback from them this morning. So, like, if some of the audience feedback here. So, Masi Mapani, the show was so insightful, really encouraging, to be honest. I have a serious interest in fintech, so the content and guests have been really helpful. You're absolutely welcome. Simon Schofield, you've provided not just a show, but a meeting place for the community to come together. I've learned so much from this forum and had the opportunity to connect with a wide range of people. And Paul Loberman kind of agrees with that. Well said, Simon Schofield. I think you and I met here and have since had 2 of our own Zoom calls sharing advice. Bhavin Shaw, the show was bright and light in the darkness of lockdown. Raoul, loved every moment. Guys, really increased my knowledge of some areas. And Paul Anderson as well. Thanks for all the content, peeps. While Sam couldn't get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, I know it's just rude, isn't it? We really should have.
Canadians can do it.
Something. We do have.
We tried.
Yeah, I mean, it's making him slightly like the Queen's speech from Sam here, but let's give it a go. So let's play the message from Sam.
Hey everybody, man, I wish I was in London with you guys, but I have a U.S. passport, so I'm not going anywhere. Man, it's amazing. We've done 130 of these U.S. breakfast shows now on LinkedIn. Man, and I remember back in March when we were talking to the media team about doing this, and we were wondering if it would work or if anyone would show up. And here we go. So there's really 3 things I think that have made this work. The first is the audience. It's the folks that have watched this. They were incredibly consistent, man. I mean, we had Dan in London, Sunaina in New York City, Sid Rahar in San Francisco, Dr. Abdullah in Saudi Arabia, Veronica in Atlanta, Amanda and David G in New York. Corey in Ruston, Louisiana. You folks showed up each and every time we did this. And not only did you show up, you participated. The questions you asked and challenged both myself and the guests we have, and the interaction you had between y'all, it was wonderful. Secondly, the guests themselves. I mean, we booked some incredible guests from great authors like Tom Peters, Nancy Durante, Chris Skinner, tech geeks like Ben Metz, Wade Arnold, Maya Bittner at Chime, company founders like Abby Wiamimo, man, loved Abby, Nikki Golimas, Clay Wilkes, Rehan Horgan, just incredible. And then fascinating guests that really challenged us. Jill Castillo, Rob Blackwell, Erica Luca, Chris Brummer, John Hope Bryant. I mean, they made the show flat out. They were fantastic and great in sharing their time with us. And third and lastly, the 11FS team behind the scenes, our media team, man. Hannah, Olivia, Michael, Tobias, Bianca, the rest of y'all, they're the best team I have literally ever worked with. They rock. I want to thank all of y'all for showing up, being part of the 11FS community, and hey, stick with us. We're going to be generating some great content and continue to publish it here on LinkedIn. So thanks for being part of the family, and we'll see you on the other side.
Sam Maul, surprised he's managed to get through so many shows without swearing so much on live streams. That's the running setup there. But
I'm
amazing.
Surprised you have, David, frankly, knowing you as well as I do.
It's been difficult. I mean, I'll be honest with you, with my kids at home during lockdown, it's practice that I've had to get into a lot better. But anyway, guys, sadly, it's for the very last time we're coming to the top of the hour. But before we do leave you, though, I just want to say the Breakfast Show was created as really a way of us all staying connected to our audience, to you guys, to each other during lockdown. And we've been really, really amazed by the response and support from the community. So we really couldn't have done this without any of you guys. So thank you so much for your support. And we hope that we've kind of brought you some value during this period of time as well. A massive thank you to the sponsors through this period as well. It's been an amazing journey for you guys to have come on with us on that one. A huge thank you to all of the amazing guests through this period of time who have really supported us and talked to us through this period as well. A massive shout out to the team at 11FS who've made this happen. Producers Hannah and Olivia, making sure that we're really, really well understood and supported every morning. Videographer Michael, always trying to make sure that we looked and sounded great and at our best. Tobias, our head of media over here at 11FS, making everything happen. And for Bianca for getting out there on the comments and social and really moving that forward. And we've also had amazing design team. So Bal and Marcus making everything look lovely. So I think they've made literally thousands of graphics for the show over the period of time that we're doing. So thank you so much for everybody. You guys are all kind of rock stars making this happen, making me and Adam and Simon look pretty in the morning, which is pretty much a difficult task. So don't worry though, we should say this isn't the end, but really the beginning of the next things that we're doing. As you know, with 11FS, we won't just be stopping what we're doing, but we're going to be launching not one, but two brand new properties to kind of keep you comfortable. So 11 Newsroom is the first one, which is a weekly deep dive into the biggest headlines of the week that have just gone by. So what we'll be doing is be joined by special guests connected to the story. And Newsroom will be a live on 11FS's LinkedIn channel at 3:30 BST every week. But we're still working out the APIs with the LinkedIn episode. So potentially it might be on YouTube for the first couple of episodes. We'll keep you posted. And the other one is 11FS Spotlight, which is going to be a weekly interview, deep diving into the best and the brightest minds from around the financial services industry. So we're really going to try and get under the skin of what the most interesting people and topics within the community really are. So in that show, we'll be finding out what it really makes what it takes to make somebody tick in that period. And that's going to be 3:30 BST every Thursday. And the first one of these will be, I believe, over on YouTube rather than LinkedIn as well. So we'll keep you kind of posted on that one as well. But this, of course, is in addition to the #1 fintech podcast on the planet. So that will still be coming out 2 times a week. So I think we've got 4 out of the 5 days of 7 days of the week kind of covered for you still in terms of content. But for now, thank you so much from everybody from 11FS. Thank you so much for the support. And this is probably the last goodbye from the Breakfast Show. So goodbye, everybody.
Bye, Breakfast Show.
Bye-bye.